everybody, and welcome to the show. Hey, we are excited to be here. I'm still on the road, and lots happening here. Very exciting show tonight. We got my friend Allie Hoppers coming on, and she's going to be talking to us about some child trafficking stuff. That's really an important topic today. I got to tell you guys, if you're looking on X today, one of the things that's trending is an old clip of Dennis Prager, and I've always liked and respected Dennis a lot. Um, but I've never seen this. And the clip today was actually, it was quite troubling. To be real honest with you guys, it kind of made me sick. And what it was Dennis was, well, he was arguing that basically a person who's really getting their jollies from watching animated child porn is somehow less than evil because there's no victim. And I'm sorry, that's disgusting. I don't care what you're doing, what you're watching. Anything that involves children is repulsive to me on levels that I can't even begin to describe. So, the fact that this is happening or was happening is just an incredible thing to me. And it really it made me sick. It made me sick on every level. And I was very disappointed to see that. But yeah, I saw that all over X today. And, I think about this, I think about the Epstein files, I think about all the things happening. And for me, at the end of the day, if our society, if our nation, if we can't protect children, then we're lost. I mean, if we can't protect the weakest in our society, we are truly lost as a nation. It makes me sick. And like I said, I really can't understand how we've gotten to a point as a nation where someone who would rape a child or who would do whatever it is against a child can ever be just let go because of who they are or what they're doing. So we're going to be talking with Allie about that today. Uh, Before we do, I want to touch on this Fauci stuff. Did you guys see this? Anthony Fauci, the one and only Anthony Fauci. Uh, well, we might actually get justice. Now, we've got the contempt stuff going on at the federal level, but the problem is at the federal level, there is no real desire to prosecute this guy. The contempt stuff, yeah, maybe they'll do that, but the guy, I mean, we know what COVID was. We know what Fauci did. And we know that there were tons of co-conspirators and others. This subpoena is a huge deal because it's being brought under state law. I want to shout out and say thank you to James Utmeyer, the Attorney General of Florida, for having the courage to do this. Now, he's doing it in collaboration with the AGs from, where was it? Louisiana and I think West Virginia. I might have that wrong. I have to double check. Let me see here. I got some notes. Uh, yeah, I believe it's West Virginia and Louisiana. I could be wrong on that. But anyways, they're subpoenaing him, which means they're looking for evidence. They're looking for data. Here's what I want to tell you guys. So James Utmeyer is going to face, I mean, to suggest he's going to face pressure is an understatement. It's not just pressure. It's going to be threats. It's going to be buy-off attempts. It's going to be all the things that I saw during COVID times 100 because this is huge. If Utmeyer stands strong on this, if he does what he needs to do, he has the potential to be one of the greatest heroes in recent American history. We could potentially start seeing the real crimes against humanity that COVID and these mRNA vaccines were. I don't know if any of this is going to lead to or talk at all about what they did in the hospitals, but it doesn't matter. If they hit the mRNA, which they're asking questions about this, right? So they're asking about Fauci's benefits, his financial benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that's really important about this to understand is this indicates that they're looking at a larger claim. Because they're looking at fraud, they may well be looking at the RICO charges that are possible in this. If they truly pursue RICO charges, it's the one path that they can really see some things happen on, right? RICO, Racketeering and Corrupt Organizations, is a phenomenal law that really has a tremendous amount of reach. It's incredibly complicated, it's difficult, but RICO is what happened here. And federal officials do not have immunity from RICO. Where there's a state RICO charge, the federal officials can be charged with that. This is a phenomenal opportunity for us. phenomenal because if we start uncovering this conspiracy for what it is and we start going after who is making money off of this, uh, that that and Hot Tamale 01, good to see you there. By the way, get involved in the comments tonight, guys. Like, comment, share, get involved. We're going to watch the Rumble comments and the comments to the best of our ability from all of our platforms, Rumbles, Locals, X. We can't do YouTube because they'll throw us off. They don't believe in free speech on YouTube. They're still censoring the hell out of everybody. And we certainly can't do it on TikTok. TikTok is the worst platform of all. But for those of you that are watching on Rumble or X, we got a freedom of reach issue. But thank God for Rumble and Locals. I see we got some of our people on Locals. I love you guys. There we actually have Southern Patriots 1776. YouTube does indeed suck. That's why we don't use it, and we're not allowed to. But we're going to try and really pay attention here. If you guys got questions or comments as we go through this. And like I said, we're touching on Fauci a little bit right now, but I really want to hit some of this stuff on the child trafficking while we've got Allie here. So make sure you're watching careful. But the short version of this Fauci situation is it looks like he's looking for information where he could do fraud, but if he goes the RICO route, we could really, really see some incredible things happening. We could get to crimes against some of these crimes against humanity. We could see what happens. We could see who's connected. Who knows? Maybe we could get Bill Gates put in jail or Borla or some of these big, big, big shots because they all belong in jail, in my opinion. After a conviction, of course. But based on the work that I've done for the last 6 years, I'm pretty confident that these guys ought to be in jail, in my opinion. So let's see what happens with that. Send anybody who can do this should be sending AG James Udmeyer a great big thank you note. We need to encourage him. We need to strengthen his fortitude. We need to make sure that he knows America is behind him, that we, the people, are behind him. So make sure that you're following his social media and telling him good job as often as you can on this, because I can assure you guys, he's going to get calls from people in the administration. He's going to get phone calls from Congress. He's going to get phone calls from everybody telling him, you better not do too much because they don't want it. There's too many people that are too paid off on this. And we need Fauci and the whole crew in jail. All right. I want to get into this trafficking stuff. Before I do, please support us. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. GiveSendGo. Do you guys know GiveSendGo? If you don't, you should. But they've supported us. They've allowed us to use their platform for years. I love GiveSendGo. They don't block you like GoFundMe. They're not horrible people. So we really, really want to say thank you to GiveSendGo. And if you can, find us there, Renz Law. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. Give whatever you can, support us. And of course, we're going to be asking for you to support Allie's organization as well. We'll get to that in 1 second. Also, support us at TomRenz.com, www.tomrenz.com. Check out our partners and affiliates. Shop them all. Usually, it's checkout code RENZ. You get a great discount. Of course, I always want to highlight my friends at Global Healing. Global Healing men's hormone support and some of these other products that they have, some of the best products on the market. I absolutely love them. And they are a wonderful, wonderful group of people. So make sure you're checking them out. And tonight we're going to highlight Rocasa, RocasaOrganics.com. Make sure you're using Renz at checkout. Rocasa is awesome, right? Rocasa is one of my favorite partners that I didn't know I would have. When I first met him and we brought him in, like, yeah, this kind of seems like, stuff that maybe I'm not the best guy to talk about. They have these creams and lotions and girly things for like makeup, but it's all organic and they're a God-based company. And I started talking about it, which is really funny to me because, they sent me sample packs out and this other stuff. And one of the first sample packs they sent out included eyebrow serum. I don't even know what eyebrow serum is to this day. I'm not sure what that's for, but I think it's a thing. And so if you need a present for your significant other, check out Rocasa. Now they also sell like organic and God-centered stuff, but their organic cleaning products are safer and healthier. Don't buy those as a present. I've learned in very, very profound ways, cleaning products do not make a good birthday present for a woman. If your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, if she needs a present, don't buy her cleaning products. Vacuum cleaners are not a great, but Rocasa's got a lot of other things. And by the way, they've got some great stuff for the men too. They have some great supplements out there and some other things that are awesome. So make sure you're checking out Rocasa Organics. Use checkout code Renz. All right. I want to get into the human trafficking stuff. So without further ado, I want to bring on my friend Allie Hopper. Allie, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm great, and I'm very excited to have you. You're doing God's work, and you're doing a lot of it, a lot of it. So listen, tell me what you got going on. Tell me about your organization. Tell me what you're doing. What's big now? Just give me a brain dump.
Well, Guard Against Trafficking is the organization. We are a 501c3 and we are doing a lot. We are in a lot of different places right now. What's up and coming is we are going to be presenting at the DHS campaign, the Blue campaign. So we'll be presenting in a breakout session, providing an insight into the perspective that we get when we interview incarcerated traffickers. So it's going to be very interesting. We'll be in DC for that, and then we'll be returning to DC for a couple of other things. Yeah, just a lot going on.
Well, this is a complicated subject, right? So I mentioned in the opening, I talked about Prager's conversation, and the thing that Prager was talking about is he was talking about these sickos who get their jollies off of watching animated child porn, which I got to be honest with you, I really didn't even think of or realize that was a thing. I guess I'd heard of some of the AI stuff, but it wasn't something that was front and center in my head until I saw this clip, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh my God. But it's a complicated thing because as it stands, under most state or federal law, if you're someone who's got child pornography, you can be prosecuted. But if you've got animated child porn or AI child porn, which can look as real as anything, most almost no states and federally, there's really just not much out there that I'm sorry, I just saw the comments. Yes, ironing boards are not a good Christmas present. I promised I'd watch the comments, and that was funny to me. But when we talk about things like animated child porn,
Yeah.
well, they claim the law says that there's no victim, so there's no crime. But I mean, this is repugnant. We need to change the law. But there's a lot of gray areas of the law like that, and you guys with your work, particularly, learning and understanding what actually happens in this process. I mean, you've seen that there's some gray areas there, right?
Absolutely. And you had mentioned Attorney General Uthmeier. He's doing a fantastic job. I'm from Florida. He is Florida's Attorney General. He is moving and shaking here in the state of Florida. And we need more brave and courageous attorneys general like him, more prosecutors, more district attorneys, states attorneys that are willing to prosecute these crimes. What's unique about Florida, and I actually had to make sure that I had the language correct, that it says that many states still require proof that an actual child was exploited, and that's how their statutes are written. But Florida's is unique, and I would encourage anyone to look at their state statutes and actually push their lawmakers to change their statutes and amend it to reflect more like Florida's statute, where it says that they close the gap by criminalizing photorealistic AI generated depictions of fictitious minors. And I think that that's extremely important because there have been studies that have been done on what psychologically changes, chemically changes in the brain when you're an individual that is viewed not only pornography, that's the first level, but then when you're viewing depictions of a minor, pornography, CSAM material, it does something to you. It changes something even further than pornography does. And once you flip that switch, you can't really undo or unflip that switch. And so it's a gateway. And as
Yeah.
soon as people start viewing this material, many times we know that that leads to more predatory behavior, more enhanced violent predatory behavior and activity. And that is what's endangering the children across any other state across the country, because not only are a lot of these AI generated materials very realistic, and oftentimes you can't even tell until an investigator investigates the material whether it is real or not, whether a child was used in the making of that content or not, or just some of the content was enhanced ever so slightly. And so it's extremely important that the laws reflect and model statutes like Florida's, where we're able to start criminalizing crimes like this.
I think that's a brilliant analysis, and I would say that I think that's something we really need to key in on, right? Because as soon as you allow people to look at a child as a sexual object in any way,
Mhm.
shape, or form, you're essentially at that point shifting the way that someone sees children. And that is a fundamental, I mean, we just, there has to be a very bright line. If you're a child, we don't look at you, we don't talk at you, and we as a society reject you sexualizing a child. We have got to do that on a profound level and take a very hard stand on it. I would say that, and I'm glad that you talked about how they did that in Florida, but I would say they should take it a step further, right? I don't think it needs to be photorealistic. As far as I'm concerned, it should not only be photorealistic, but it should be any depiction of a child,
Yeah.
including animated. I don't care if you drew it with I don't care if you drew it with crayons. If you're sexualizing a child, that just is, it's going to create a break.
Yeah.
We're allowing and we're tolerating people in some way, shape, or form, not only sexualizing a child in a way that's wildly inappropriate, but also communicating that that uh, that mental disorder or whatever it is on a large scale. So, I mean, yes, 100%. I agree with you that Florida's doing that, but I think we need to take it further. I think that we need to criminalize any sort of a depiction, whether it's photorealistic or not,
Yeah.
of anything related to children and sex.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, we've been edging towards this problem for a while, right? With the
Yeah,
sexualization of children, exposing children to sexual material, not just exposing adults to the sexualizing of minors, but also exposing children to sexual content and material that is not age appropriate, and that is taken out of the hands of the parents. The parents should determine when that content is introduced to their child, what that content encompasses, and how that conversation happens. But, we have entities like the Department of Education that were trying to co-opt the parents' responsibility, and many
yeah,
parents were giving up their parental rights to allowing the education systems to educate and raise our children.
yeah,
It's one thing for them to educate them in what the confines of the education system was intended to educate them on, but it's another thing to raise your children.
yeah,
Those are your children. You're a parent for a reason. You're supposed to raise your children. You're not supposed to outsource that responsibility to the government. And when you do that, then you're going to get results like this, where our children are massively indoctrinated. They've forgotten important elements of their history. They struggle to understand biological concepts like what a man is and what a woman is, and when when a man can be or cannot be a woman, and understanding vice versa, that those lines are definitive and they are concrete.
yeah.
XY, and in very small cases XXY. But understanding that in an age appropriate manner is the parent's right. And I'm a parent. My children are elementary school age, and so we're having these very conversations, and we are very involved in making sure that we don't allow the school to overstep the boundaries that we have set for our household.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and when you say that, of course, what comes to mind is, California and some of the states like that, and the school systems and the library systems where they have these grooming books, these perversion books, that are targeting children. I mean, they're literally targeting children to
Yeah.
sexualize them. And they claim that it's about education. But I've looked at some of these materials. There's nothing educational about some of these books that they had out there. The Biden administration is a case study in this, of course, California as well, and going so far as to allow the schools to keep secrets from the parents. Now that's been overturned in the courts, but keep secrets from the parents about their child's decision, or
Yeah.
so they like to think, to seek gender affirming care, these other things. Essentially, they're removing the parental protections that that any normal child would get, so that these kids can make decisions that they're wildly incapable. I mean, you got a kid who can't drive a car because they're not capable of doing that. They're not able to vote. They're not able to own a gun. They can't join the military, but they're able to decide whether or not they want to participate in chemical castration or some other nonsense that's going to have lifelong health effects. And it's all about the sexualization of kids. I would go further than that, though. I would say that this started, and one of the root problems was when Hollywood really started sexualizing kids. When they started showing kids being sexually active, and they show the super attractive, way too young girl and the super attractive, way too young boy, and they're doing what super attractive, way too young kids do. That may be a reality, but the problem is when we present that on a societal scale, globally, it brings in these perverts, and it starts getting people to think of kids in a way that they shouldn't be thinking of kids. There needs to be a moral bright line between sex and children. It just needs to be rock solid across the board. I don't view this as a free speech issue. I view this as a protection issue. I'm rabidly pro free speech, rabidly.
Yeah.
But we do have the one place that we do have certain limits is, for example, I can't lie to you about a product I'm selling, right? Because we believe
Yep.
in protecting consumers from fraud. I can't, you can't scream fire in a crowded theater, right? You can't do something that you know and that is likely to cause harm. The Supreme Court set the standard, right? You can say hate speech is okay, but the standard basically is if it can and has a high likelihood of causing harm, then it's something that can be regulated. Well, sexualizing children has a very high likelihood of causing harm because it brings perverts out. It creates perverts. It creates in people's minds the idea that somehow sex and kids is an okay thing.
Yeah. And part of the problem is that we're not coming out with laws that are strong enough against these crimes. In some states, you get a higher penalty for poaching animals than you do for poaching a child, and that's unacceptable. I mean, under no circumstance should the laws of an animal supersede the laws of a child.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. And AJ 1361 noted the anti-grooming laws that we need to have much, much stronger and much, much more protective. Now that a few minutes ago, Zuski asked how we feel about capital punishment for child sex felons and why. And I'm just going to tell everybody where I stand on this. If you are a child rapist or something of that sort, if you're caught molesting children, I think you should immediately be neutered. Immediately, as soon as you're convicted, mandatory neutering. You turn them into a eunuch, and you don't have to worry about it ever again. And in some cases, yeah, I think capital punishment. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the death penalty ever, because of the permanence of it, and just as a faith thing. As a Christian, but if there's a spot that I believe in capital punishment, it's crimes against children. It really is just appalling. What do you think about the penalty side of this? I mean, how do you feel about that? It's a tough question.
It is tough, and it's tough because we have, the rights of states versus the laws that govern at the federal level. And I know that that was the way that our country was intended to be. It's
Yep.
tough when you get a patchwork of legislation, especially with the introduction of the internet, and some of these crimes cross over state lines. And
Yeah.
so, how do you handle crimes like that? Does everything get escalated to a federal crime and prosecuted at the federal level? And exploring some of these conversations and having these conversations are extremely important. When you prosecute women that are committing prostitution, and you're actively prosecuting that, or you're actively charging for that, but you're not actively also looking at the other side. Who's buying it? Who's running these girls? Who's
Yep.
controlling their money? Who's controlling their appointments? Who are they banking with? These are the questions that we're not asking. We are stopping right at the commodity, as traffickers call it. This is the commodity. And we're stopping at the commodity without going one
Yeah.
step further to say, is this person a self-employed? Self-employed. Are they
Yeah.
a sex worker, or do they have a pimp? If they have a pimp, it's not a pimp, and it's probably not prostitution. It's probably sex trafficking. And
Yeah.
so when you take that lens and you start to apply it, you understand that you shouldn't just be prosecuting cases of prostitution. You should be looking at the buyers, the banking aspect, and like I said, who is the scheduling? How are they doing the scheduling? What platform are they using? And so you're attacking infrastructure. And
Yeah.
I think that when you start to attack infrastructure, you're going to start to see some of these mechanisms fall, but they're not falling right now because we're only going after the commodity and not the
Yeah.
infrastructure that is selling the commodity.
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, so one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that the cartels got into the trafficking on a profound level. They found out that human trafficking is actually more valuable than drugs in many cases, and so the cartels and when with the open borders what we had under Biden, it was a huge issue. There's actually when I was a young guy, I actually spent some time. I was in Guatemala at one point, and people were very, very guarded, right? Because I'm a 6'4" white dude, and I'm obviously not local. So I'm working in some of these remote villages, and one of the things that I saw was people were very guarded, and I said, "Well, what's the problem? I'm here trying to help." And they said, "Well, uh, too many times when someone that looks like you comes to this village, they're coming to take our kids." Like, what do you mean
Yeah.
they're kidnapping these Central American kids and trafficking them to the U.S. for sex or for whatever sort of trafficking they're doing, and but predominantly for sex. Because unfortunately, the United States is probably the largest sex trafficking nation on the planet, and there's just an immense amount of money there. So we really do, we've seen the FBI talk about all of these different people that they're arresting for possessing child porn and this, that, and other, and good. They need to be dealt with, but we really, really need to go after the money guys, which is why part of the reason I've been on such a tangent about the Epstein files. We got to go after the people at the top, the people who fund this, the people who promote this, and we certainly need to go after the people in our society who are the wealthiest and most powerful that are participating in this. That's the only way to really stop it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that it's a three-pronged approach. We need to hold our lawmakers accountable that if they aren't voting for legislation that protects our children and that combats human trafficking, whether it's labor, whether it's sex, whether it's child, whether it's adult, if they're not supporting legislation, co-sponsoring, sponsoring legislation, or they're voting against legislation that does those things, they need to be primary, they need to be challenged, and they need to be ejected from their seat. We need to be holding our judges accountable, right? We've seen
Yeah,
so many offenders of violent crime get off with a slap on the wrist,
yeah,
time served, probation, things like that. And so when we're not holding these violent offenders accountable, then you're also seeing that aspect of the justice system fail because the law enforcement can do everything right, make sure that it goes to its day in court, and then all of a sudden the sentencing is very lenient. So we need to make sure the justice system and that the attorneys, and like I had mentioned earlier, the prosecutors, district attorneys, state's attorneys, are actually prosecuting these crimes. I'll tell you, Tom, what was really disheartening was we were giving a training to law enforcement, and these were seasoned sex crimes detectives, and they were really passionate about going after sex trafficking, especially child sex trafficking. And what we ended up finding out later was that sometimes it doesn't reach the level of being charged as sex trafficking because that's not the public message that the district attorney or the state's attorney wants to deliver, that there's a sex trafficking problem in their area, right? So they're charging for other things, sexual battery, soliciting a minor, traveling to meet a minor, kidnapping of a minor. They would rather charge with 5 or 6 other things than charge, sex trafficking of a minor, even if it fits all of the elements, because it doesn't paint the right picture that they want for their community. And that's really unfortunate, because when you're looking at it that way, as far as messaging to the community, oh, well, we would rather keep our numbers low, or see, we don't have a problem with sex trafficking here, we're a safe community. Well, that's not entirely accurate, because when your records show that you have multiple offenders traveling to meet minors, soliciting minors, and getting caught with minors, you have a problem. It just doesn't sound like the boogeyman of sex trafficking. So we need to hold these people accountable. We need to hold our lawmakers accountable. We need to make sure that our law enforcement has the support that they need, and that they're going after the criminals that are committing these crimes, and that the justice system, meaning the prosecutors, the district attorneys, state's attorneys, and the judges, are doing what they need to do. And, Guard Against Trafficking, like one of the comments in the chat said, we don't just go and research. We educate people, and it's more of that deeper level of education, right? So there are organizations out there that educate at a higher level. And those education components are extremely important. We can educate parents and community members and churches as well. But when you're working on educating and teaching and training law enforcement, seasoned sex crimes detectives, FBI, HSI, you need to be able to help walk them through investigating it appropriately, identifying it, how to assist your prosecutor with prosecuting it, how to handle yourself when you're testifying on behalf of a case like this. And so we're walking them through more of the intricate details of what this looks like from the perspective of law enforcement, lawmakers, and we've been receiving a lot of positive feedback, because that level of training is so needed. And I'm glad that my director of corrections is going to be with you on one of the shows in the future, because we have kicked off in the past couple of months a corrections initiative. It is one of the forgotten pillars of the justice system, and the corrections piece is so important, because if we're not identifying those that are vulnerable to sex trafficking, that are in there for crimes other than being a victim of sex trafficking, you're missing an entire population that you could be identifying and assisting. And you're also missing an entire population of people that have predatory behavior that could be there for other crimes other than trafficking, but are still having patterns of behavior that reflect those similar patterns that we would see in trafficking cases. So that director and that initiative is so extremely important to the work we're doing, and the amount of passion and insight and information and excitement that we're receiving from the correction side is truly amazing. We know that it's been an issue for a while, men's facilities, women's facilities, juvenile detention facilities, as far as recruitment within facilities. But it took time for leadership to say, okay, we are aware of this issue now. We need to figure out how we can solve for it. And we seem to be hitting that point right now. And I don't want to go too far into it, because I would love my director to explain more on that. But these are the things that Guard Against Trafficking does that stands out, that's more unique, in the sense that we need groups out there that are doing prevention and education. We need the rescue organizations, and we need the aftercare facilities and aftercare support. But what Guard does is almost that niche component of identifying human trafficking from a criminal forensic psychology perspective. And how do we help law enforcement identify some of these predatory behaviors? We're conducting interviews consistently with incarcerated traffickers, understanding that when elements change, like border security, we know that now the border is more secure on the southern border, but we know trafficking is still happening. They're still moving people. They're still selling children. So how are they doing this? How are they still conducting business? What platforms are they using? How are they exchanging money? If something gets shut down, where do they go to next? And these are the things that are helping local, state, and federal agencies, instead of having a reactive response, start to have a proactive response and start to get ahead of the traffickers that we always seem to be 5, 10, 15 steps behind.
Well, one of the things you said that I'm really interested in was you mentioned a minute ago about the local prosecutors that don't want to have a child sex trafficking problem in their jurisdiction. Now, I've worked with a couple groups in this space, and I know of at least one instance that I'm very confident saying that part of the reason that the prosecutor in that area didn't want to pursue it was because that prosecutor, there were implications that that prosecutor was involved with child sex on some levels. I'm not going to mention names because the evidence that they had was non-public evidence, and it's not something that I'm allowed to talk about here. But you know, that seemed in that case that was an instance. Do you think? Because we've heard the stories, right? And we know, for example, if you've heard of brownstoning,
No.
maybe. Okay, so let me tell you about brownstoning. So brownstoning is something that's a very real thing. I've worked with a number of people who are highly placed in Washington. And brownstoning in Washington, for example, would be that you're a congressman, right? A new congressman, and you go out to dinner, and someone buys you a drink, and the next thing you know, you wake up in a hotel room. You were drugged. Your drink was drugged, and you have no recollection of what happened. But you wake up in a hotel room, and there's a couple pictures on the pillow next to you with a note that says, "We own you. We'll be in touch." Right? And so what happens is they drug you. You end up getting pictures taken of you in a very compromising position, and then they blackmail you. Right? This is a real thing, and we don't know how widespread it is, but we do
Yeah.
know that this happens and that it is a real thing. The problem is that we don't know how widespread it is. Now,
Yeah.
if you think about the groups that traffic children, the cartels, et cetera, et stuff that are out there, certainly that's not something that's beyond what they would do. I mean, if you traffic a child, blackmailing someone is hardly a crime that you wouldn't do. So we know that that's a real thing, and we know that it does happen. I'm wondering if you have any sense, or if you've ran across, or if you've looked, and you probably haven't, because very few people even look at this. How widespread do you think that this trafficking thing is something that isn't being addressed properly because there's people involved? And I would point to Epstein, right? I would point to Epstein as a case study in this, right? You have very, very big, powerful names, allegedly including Bill Gates, allegedly including the what's his name, the Prince Andrew. People like that, people who are globally of importance that were allegedly involved with Epstein, and of course they aren't going to want any of that out there, and they aren't going to want it prosecuted. Have you ran across, have you seen, or do you think that that's a more widespread, less widespread? Where do you fall on that? Is that more just maybe you just don't have enough information to say?
I haven't encountered that specifically. What I would say is that the cartels that we've encountered have not been at the caliber of dealing with an elite population like that. And so if you're at the level where an individual is looking to coerce you, blackmail you, sextort you, it's because they want something from you. So you
Yeah,
either have money, power, or influence. Um, we haven't encountered that. Now I can completely believe that that does happen.
yeah,
I can believe that it would, I would think that it's at a smaller scale than what we're encountering, because we have a heart problem as not just a country but a world,
yeah,
where we have fallen victim to so many different sins, if you will, drinking too much, doing drugs, and engaging in just sexual activity galore, and just like we said, sexualizing of adults, of minors, of everything, everything that we consume, everything that we watch, that we do, has been all about what makes you feel good rather than what is your moral obligation and your responsibility to society. And
Yeah.
so I think that when you're dealing with the average person, most of them don't have a level of power and influence that would that we would encounter in that circumstance. We're encountering, you know, maybe the local law enforcement officer, firefighter, doctor, mailman, and it's not to say that there's anyone in any particular industry that is more apt to participate in this than others. We've seen every single type of individual engaged in whatever job engage in this activity.
Yeah.
But at that elite level, to your point, we haven't encountered that. I have heard of that, but we're dealing more on the day-to-day domestic levels of trafficking. Epstein was a great doorway for people to start to open their eyes on the horrific atrocities of what's going on, that it's real, that it was happening. It was happening in many different countries with victims across the world, perpetrators from across the world. And it consumed the media. But at the same time, I was encouraging people, saying, while you're consumed with this, there's many Epstein rings going on in every single state across this country. So if
Yes.
you really want to stop Epstein 2.0 from happening again, make sure that you have an understanding of the issue, that your lawmakers are on board, that your children are safe, that your community is protected. And if everyone did just that, if they just solidified their household and everyone solidified their own household and their own children, and by extension, every community was solidified, traffickers would have a very hard time finding victims, because they would be hesitant to walk into communities like, if there were 1,000 Grady Judds, you know, the traffickers would think twice about walking into areas where they say, if you're a trafficker and you come into our county, we're going to prosecute you and we're going to throw the book at you. So you better think twice about coming into our county and our state with attorneys generals like Uthmeier. But then
Well,
you get states that are sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that
yeah.
allow for this behavior, and so then you get traffickers that actually navigate to sanctuary cities and states because they
Yeah.
can operate more freely. So
It's mind blowing. I love the way that you're looking at this, and I agree with you because what you're saying is a lot like General Flynn: local action, national impact. If you protect the home, you don't. It's that's going to take care of a lot of the problems, and everybody needs to be vigilant on this. Now, I would challenge you and this is just a friendly thing because we're on the same team, and I love you guys. But I would challenge you to take a peek, and I would look at this the way because I'm not as deep in this as you are, but I've done some homework. I would challenge you to take a peek and consider the way that the blackmail rings work on the cartels on the drug sides. A local prosecutor has the authority to deal with this.
yeah,
So let's say you've got a prosecutor, a Soros appointed prosecutor in Houston or Los Angeles or wherever. Well, they may not be the influence on the national level that we're talking about or international level like Epstein, but for a cartel in a big city or a big area with a high population and a lot of perverts, well, there would be a very strong incentive because it's easier to blackmail a local prosecutor than it is a federal senator. So just kind of keep an eye out on that. Some of the groups that I've talked to that do the child rescue and some of this, that, and other, some of these are credible guys. I'm not going to mention too many names here,
yeah.
but some of these guys are very credible. They've presented pretty strong evidence to me suggesting that that might be a more widespread problem than we realize. And one of the things that I would say is this: if you aren't doing everything you can to protect children, if you aren't going after the rings, if you're not going after the people in charge, I want to know why. I
Yep.
want to know why. Is what's the reason? Because there is zero excuse.
Yep.
It's politically, who's going to be like, even if you're just playing the political game, who's not in favor of protecting kids other than perverts, rapists, and child molesters? I mean, it's only the sickos that want to protect these people. So, the question I have is how widespread is the sickness? How widespread has it really become? And, so anyways, so what do you guys, what are your big steps? What are you guys working on right this minute? I want people to support you guys in every way humanly possible, by the way. Um, guard against trafficking, guys. Guardagainsttrafficking.org. Guardagainsttrafficking.org. Please. And by the way, for any of you guys that care about this, we need like, share, comment. That makes a huge difference because this is a censored topic. This is a topic that for my part, and I'm going to speak for myself, Allie. I'm of the belief that this is a much more widespread issue than we know. I'm of the belief that there are a lot of people in power, whether it be locally, federally, nationally, state, that are uh, by lots is a relative term. I'm not going to say it's, like majority 50%, but I mean, if it's two, it's too many, right? I think there are a lot more people involved than probably should be. And I think that we really need to be to pushing this. And anybody that's not willing to go after this to the fullest extent possible, I think we really, really, really need to be asking why. Because, I mean, it's a political win anywhere if you can bring down a child trafficking network, especially, I mean, any human trafficking, but particularly child trafficking. I mean, it's awful. Now, Allie, you and I talked. One of the areas I think is really interesting is, and I want to really hit this before the show's over because this is super important. I'm pretty straightforward. You're raping a kid, neutered, you're a eunuch,
Yeah.
that's it. And maybe we do more than that. Maybe you get strung up. Um, and I mean, it's pretty black and white, but there's instances out there where maybe it's not so black and white, and the law needs to be a little more nuanced. And the two that we talked about, and I think it's worth talking about on the show, is if you're a 20, 22, 23-year old and you got some kid who looks 22, 23, but has a fake ID and they're in a place they should, and you just, it's hard to call someone who's, 22, 23 a child rapist if they thought the kid was an adult. I mean, there are extenuating circumstances in some instances. And you brought up, and this is really important. I'd love your wisdom on this. I'd love people to hear about this. What about the people who are trafficked, who are then forced to recruit others into trafficking or else? And I'd love you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we talked about that before the show started, and I think that these are the conversations that are extremely important. This is when you start to look under the hood of human trafficking, and you scratch below the surface. You get below the surface, and you start to see the realities of what human trafficking is. You start to see that today's victim could be tomorrow's suspect, and in your
Yeah.
example, we've encountered people that have been arrested for recruiting, and then we find out that they were forced into recruitment so as to give themselves a break for the evening. So I think that those elements need to be considered when people are taken into custody. Now, I do believe that everyone needs to face, the consequences for the crimes they commit. But I think that those factors can be weighed into the case as far as sentencing, as far as how they're going to handle the case. So if you're a recruiter and someone's giving you $500 for every minor you recruit, well, that's vastly different than saying, you want a break and I've made you service 30 people a night for the past month. If you want a break tonight, you need to bring me someone else. That's a different situation than the person that was making $500 a head on a minor. So
No.
you have two cases of recruitment, but the background of what that recruitment entailed is extremely different. And I think those are the cases that we need to understand. We need to understand that crimes that are so traumatic like this, if they're not addressed properly, that trauma can continue and become a generational trauma. We've seen generational trafficking situations where a grandparent was trafficked or abused. Let's just say not just even trafficked. Let's open and broaden it to abuse. Where a grandparent was abused and then a parent was abused, and then that parent allows their child to be abused, or allows, someone to get close to their child that abuses them. And if we don't cut this cycle of exploitation and trauma off and say that it ran in my family until it ran into me, and stop it with the appropriate mental health services and support, then we're going to continue having generations of very traumatized individuals that are desensitized to sexual crimes, and that are more either vulnerable to having crimes committed against them continuously, or them themselves committing crimes. So we
Yeah.
need to understand the mentality of these traumas, of these abuses. And that's why someone had mentioned earlier about the grooming law. It's so important. It's so incredibly important. We had mentioned on one of your earlier shows it was about a year ago, I think,
Yeah.
that we had gotten the anti-grooming bill passed in Florida, which made it a felony 3 for adults that sexually groom minors,
Yeah.
harmful, explicit communication or conduct with a minor. And why it was important was, when we were explaining it to lawmakers, was that we were saying this is the gateway, this is the doorway to most exploitation, most sexual abuse, most sex trafficking that happens. It starts with that grooming phase. And if we can give law enforcement the tools to intervene before a child gets hurt, before they're lured, before they're enticed to someone's house, before they send that first photo or that first video, then we're giving law enforcement tools to intervene earlier in the process and hopefully avoid some of that more traumatic situation and circumstances. Now, any child or adult that's been groomed like that, they're going to still need assistance processing that, but you're helping deter that more horrific trauma. And so
Yeah.
when we start having these conversations, what is grooming? What is sexual grooming? What is inappropriate communication and conduct? And start having these conversations as parents, and not saying what is stranger danger, but rather what are healthy boundaries and what are inappropriate boundaries, regardless of who it is. If it's a police officer that comes up to you but touches, you in a certain area, it doesn't matter if it's someone that's wearing a badge, or someone that's wearing a lab coat, or someone that's wearing a mail carrier uniform. They're inappropriate boundaries that are set no matter who it is. And so when we have these conversations, then we're starting to, like I said, protect families, protect children, protect communities, and open that conversation up. So to answer your question, as far as things that we need to do to start pushing back on this, is it's the grooming, it's understanding what it is, it's understanding elements like sextortion, it's understanding the dangerous apps out there. I still have parents that allow their kids on Roblox, that allow their kids to have Snapchat. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't understand why. You've seen headline after headline after headline of how dangerous Roblox is, that it's a gateway and a doorway to predators galore, giving access to your child. And no game to me is worth it. My child can go without. I mean, heck, I'll throw the game system out the window before I soon as give them access to Roblox.
Yeah.
But and the same thing goes for systems like Snapchat. Like, there is no need in my mind to have a disappearing message. I don't care if all their friends have it. If you have a cell phone and you're able to text, that's good enough for me. I can't be bothered with being the popular parent. I am going to be the
No.
protective parent that makes sure that I at least can do everything in my ability to protect my children.
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, one of the biggest problems we have are parents trying to be friends and trying to be this and trying to be that. And, I'm proud to say that, I consider my kids to be my friends, and I love my kids. I'd do anything for them. But we have very, very, very hard rules in the house. There's just, they are what they are. And my kids are 16 and 13, and they don't have social media, and they don't need social media of any type,
Good for you.
because what value is there to giving a child social media? They don't need a platform. The only thing they can do is say the wrong thing and then have it held against them for the rest of their life, which we've seen happen now. And there's just absolutely no value. So the idea that you're just going to let your kid communicate incognito with God knows who about God knows what. I mean, they're children. We don't let them buy guns. We don't let them choose to drink. We don't let them to do all sorts of things because they make dumb decisions. That's part of being a child. In fact, I mean, I'm a man, so I mean, at 49 years old, I still make dumb decisions. Someone should probably remove my ability to do things, but you know, but but I mean, especially the kids. Uh, you just why would you expose them to a situation where nothing good can come and a lot bad can come? It just seems like a bad situation to me. Allie, we're at the end of the show. Plug the heck out of your organization. We got to have you guys back. It's been a minute since you've been on, and I just lost track of you guys, and I'm sorry to say that. I'm embarrassed to say that because I'm I was so excited about what you guys are doing, but there's so many crises in this country. It's hard to keep up with everything. You guys should come back anytime you need to. It's an open door invitation. And anytime that we can do it, we're happy to help support and promote anything you're doing. And I will personally help her support in anything that you guys are doing, because it needs to be done. And you guys have taken a kind of positioned yourself uniquely in this space. So uh, plug yourself away, and let's get people supporting you. And here, let's hear it.
All right. So thank you so much for having me again, Tom. I look forward to coming on, having these real talks, because honestly, we need conversations and podcasts that go deeper than the surface. We need people to engage in the chat, ask questions, because these are the opportunities that we're going to be able to get questions answered. There's not many organizations that have had the opportunity to look in the eyes of some of the darkest offenders on this planet. And that has given us the insight to be able to combat this in a meaningful way. And we are a 501c3. We appreciate every single donor that has supported our work. I just brought up a very quick list. We just got our C3 status in 2025. And with those donations, I don't know many organizations within their first year of existence that were able to reach millions. We not only conducted numerous research trips, interviews with incarcerated traffickers, survivors. We testified before Congress and Senate a total of 5 times in under 2 years. So unless you're Fauci, we're in trouble. That's usually very tough to do. And we are actually, now it's 6 times we've testified. 25 trainings in 14 states, 3 nations, and 2 continents. This is in 1 year, Tom. And we've worked with the U.S. Embassy in the nation of Belize. We've led to the investigation and rescue of over 150 children in the United States. And this is what your dollars are going to. These are the questions that when you're supporting a nonprofit and you're looking at their 990, these are the things that people really want their money to go towards, to be able to have real life examples and show that this is the list of accomplishments of an organization that I want to support, that I know is doing the work, and that I know has way more on the horizon. So like I said, we're going to be in Washington, D.C. in 2 weeks. We're going to be at that Blue campaign teaching a session there, but we're also going to be back in DC at the beginning of September. I am not at liberty to disclose yet for what reason, and then we will be returning to Pennsylvania at a corrections facility to help train corrections individuals and agencies in combating human trafficking. So I will leave that for our director for the next segment as far as that corrections initiative, but I just want to let anyone that has supported us in the past, that supports us now, or would like an organization that is doing the work to support, we really value you. We appreciate you. And this wouldn't be possible without you.
Well, listen, guardagainsttrafficking.org, everybody. Help share this. We'll have some clips from this show. We'll put them out there. When you guys help us share this, make sure that you're saying, hey, support guardagainsttrafficking.org. Let people know. Share, share, share. That's the way we get support. That's how we get people to be aware. Allie's been standing strong on this. God bless you for what you do. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your support. We appreciate you guys being here, and y'all have a wonderful night.